Hello and welcome to this episode of the Excalibur podcast, hosted by me, Kyle Brooks. Today we have a phenomenal guest, Ken Frownfelter. He is a brother of mine, has gone through the crucible, and we have gotten to know each other extremely well over the past year. Ken, welcome to the Excalibur podcast. Sir.
Thank you, Kyle. How are you, sir?
I have never had a better day. How about yourself?
Yeah. I'm fantastic myself. I am honestly, today is a very good day. Yes.
Great stuff, Great stuff. Well, thank you so much for coming through and for being a part of this podcast. I know that you've got your own podcast and you've been very successful in actually launching that platform and speaking about a whole diversity of different topics. But today, I think that we agreed that we would like to talk about moving through adversity to find out and execute, more importantly, on your purpose, even though you have a current day job. How do you balance that?
So I guess you got to go back to the idea of what it is. You know, we talk about what our purpose is. Now, a lot of people look at their purpose as being that thing that they go and I got to go do that. That's the thing I'm going to do in life. But what about beyond that? Because we have this fine time of life that we have. And that's and then we even identify ourselves as that thing that we do at that time. And we got to make sure that that's not what we're doing, because we are not just right now, we're not confined to this time. We have to be able to go back and forth and figure out why we want to do things, how we want to do things. And so that should develop your ability to balance that. It's as if we all have family, we all have, responsibilities. But if we choose just to go after that thing, we're going to start taking that balance away from other things. It's just the idea of compartmentalizing life. And what are you putting more into? It's like a marriage. Both people, they say marriage is 50-50. When I don't believe it is, I think marriage should be 100-100, because there's a point when you're not at your best, right? Maybe you're sick, or maybe you are just beat down from day-to-day life or whatever. That person's going to be able to then pull you up and carry you up just a little bit, right? And so that's the idea. You're doing that with other things, with whether it's your bills or whether it's your job or whether it's that thing that you want to go do one day, or your hobbies, or whatever the case is. You are responsible to compartmentalize, because if one thing takes over, it's going to take over completely. It's the same thing I've heard you mention before. When you're trying to do something, you've got to put 100% into that thing to get it done. Well, you are a part of that thing, making sure that thing gets done. In this case, with your passions and your the thing you've been called to do, you are the thing, and you have to give parts of you to that thing. You can't give unless you make that all of it, but you're going to sacrifice other things. And so you're going to have to sacrifice. So you have to figure out what is important. And if 100% of one day is put towards that project, that's good. You have to make sure you have another part later on during that week or whatever to give to your family, your wife, your kids, your job, whatever the case may be.
What you're saying is it's kind of a harmony, an ebb and flow of energy between what it is that you're currently doing on a day-to-day and how you can spread that energy into your priorities based on that, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. Absolutely. Well, you have to, because if you just decide that I'm going to start doing this, whatever thing, you are now deciding to go do that. It hasn't been a part of you up until this point. Maybe you've been training for it or whatever, but now it's 100% of the time. What are you now going to have to sacrifice time for? Because you've been putting the time you're putting toward that thing. Now you're putting it towards that, and you're not having it towards your family, your wife, your kids, your job, your passions, your sleep, whatever the case may be.
No, I get you. So based on that, the ebb and flow of your different energies and how you're going to be compartmentalizing your life, When you go through a difficult time, for example, we can talk about the Crucible because we both went through the Crucible, and I would say that that is one of the top adversities that I have faced in my life. I mean, I'm honored to have become a graduate from that, but I mean, it's a 40% dropout rate from the Crucible, and we saw that on the first day of going through the Crucible. So, if you look at that from an outsider's perspective, and taking full advantage point from that, how is it that you were able to navigate through that adversity and come out the other side unscathed?
So that's something that I've given a lot of thought to. I'd say since the Crucible and probably until about January of 2024,
Mm-hmm.
this year, that I thought, okay, what exactly? I've had conversations with other guys about that. Oh, I saw this or I felt this or that sort of thing. The things that
Mm-hmm.
I learned about myself specifically is one, we know it's not all physical because
Yes.
it's not, right? But that is the first thing that you need to start working on because that is the first, and you have to do it long before the situation arises. And then whether it's the crucible or whether it's your father's funeral, I don't care what it is, there's a physical component to everything we go through. You have to
Yeah.
prepare yourself physically. Because you learn what you're capable of when you go through something physical. When you go through a physical situation, you work out, you do you do martial arts, you do jujitsu, you do karate, whatever you do, and you decide I'm going to work hard. There's something that changes in your mind that okay, I can go further than what I could have done before. So there's a
Mm-hmm.
physical component that is needed to be worked on. You have to work out. You have to put yourself through challenges. You have to make yourself physically uncomfortable. That's how growth happens. You look at a crustacean, a lobster or a crab or whatever, they grow beyond their exoskeleton. What happens? That thing has to molt off, right? Well,
Yeah.
that has to be uncomfortable. That's uncomfortable. It's you're now exposed. You're in a position
Mm-hmm.
that you're there until you can harden until they can harden that shell back up. Now they're safe again.
Yeah.
They're safe from predators and other animals that want to kill them and eat them until they decide that they need to grow again and they're going to
Grow
grow
again.
beyond that
Yeah.
shell. That thing has to break off. And so you're exposed again. You're weak. You are vulnerable. And so until that thing grows back. And it's also painful. It hurts. That's the same
Mm-hmm.
thing that we go through when we physically have to go through something. You physically go through adversity to actually build yourself up to be strong enough to go through the next one. The next part that I see is a mental side of it. In that physical growth, you are developing your mental capacity to be able to push beyond what you thought you could go, the mental
Mm-hmm.
capacity to push beyond your comfort zone, all that stuff like that. This and we can talk about mental growth and mental adversity and challenges and those things. But if we don't build that thing up, we can be uncomfortable. And when we get uncomfortable physically, our mind is going to be like, yeah, we should go ahead and stop because it hurts. Instead of our
Yeah.
mind being in control of our body, saying, no, no, we're fine. We're going to keep going. We can go unless your bones are sticking out of your skin or something like that. And then maybe still you need to go. You don't have an option. But your mind has to be
For
strong enough
sure.
to push you beyond that. Jordan
Mm-hmm.
Peterson has the thing that says, try to be the strongest person at your father's funeral, which is why I brought that up
Right.
before.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's not talking about biceps and quadriceps and all that stuff like that. He's talking about your mental ability, your heart being strong enough that everybody is now looking to you for support. Everybody is looking to you to be that guy who's going to hold up the family because you are now your father, right? You are that
Yeah.
guy. You are now the person that is there to protect the
The
family.
man of the house. Yeah.
Right. And so that's that idea. You have to be strong enough when your mom's crying, your sisters, your cousins, your grandmother, everybody's, you know, at the end of their rope, you're the only one, you're standing strong for everybody. So your mental acuity, so your physical, your mental, those have to be built up and they support each other. The third one that I noticed was emotional content. Your emotional thing. We were at a part in the crucible that we were waiting for our next iteration and guys were just standing around. And there were guys who were, they're tough guys. They're truck drivers. We had construction workers. They're just tough guys all around. And they're start talking about their families and their
Mm-hmm.
wives and their kids. and they're breaking down crying because they're
Hmm.
physically exhausted, they're mentally exhausted. This emotional thing. Normally, most people can talk about their family, their kids, their wives, and they're not crying. But these manly men were crying, not like bawling like babies, but bringing a tear to their eye because the emotions were so strong. So that's obviously a portion that starts coming out. Now, everybody talks about uh, do what you feel, or, I felt this and this is why I'm doing whatever. That's fine, but it can't prolong your push through your adversity. It's not going to be a thing that's going to push you through to that next level. It is a catalyst. It can explode you forward, but that's it.
Hmm.
It'll get you off the couch, but it won't keep you going when things get difficult. That's where your mind comes in. That's where your knowledge of your physicality comes in. But your emotions, very important. You got to be able to hold those, develop those, and then understand why you're feeling the way you're feeling. But you can't base your decisions off of your feelings because your feelings
Right.
are just that moment. They're just a thing for that time. So when you have an opportunity, feel those feelings, but don't let them control you, and don't let those things tell you what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to do it. Make sure that you have some kind of knowledge, you have some mental base to be able to build that off of after you've developed your physical, and your mental and physical been working together. Your emotions are going to come in. Use that as a catalyst to explode forward to the next and the final volume, I guess, pillar, cylinder, whatever you want to call this in this thing that I'm talking about, and that is your spiritual side. Your
Okay.
spiritual side is so important because your spirit, we lack that. We don't even think about that, and that is so important. And whether your spirituality is doing yoga or just going out in nature, praying. Personally, I pray, I talk to God, I believe in Jesus. That whole thing is important for my spirituality because when all those other things are depleted, my physical ability, I can't move any further. My mental acuity is completely tapped, and I can't even formulate a sentence. My
Hmm.
emotions are drained because they drain really fast. I've got nothing else. What else can I go to? Something that's kind of outside of me or in the depths of me. The trick is we're able to go to work out. We're able to read. We're able to go see a therapist. We can go replenish our emotions with our loved ones and things of that nature. But what do we do for our spiritual side? Do we build that up? Because if you need to call on that as a fuel source, if you haven't developed that, if you haven't pulled from that, if you haven't strengthened that, you're going to go into it and you're going to be out of sorts. You're going to be very uncomfortable doing it. And if you're uncomfortable doing something, you're going to want to not do it, which is why most people avoid this portion of adversity is that spiritual side. Develop your spiritual side too. You don't have to be a guru or anything like that. But if you
Yeah.
haven't prayed and now all of a sudden it's the worst day of your life and you have nobody around you and you're thinking, okay, I remember when I was a kid, I prayed, and my mom took me to church. And then you're like, okay, God, I don't know what to do. He's still going to listen to you. He still knows who you are. He will not leave you nor forsake you. He says that. However,
Hmm.
if you don't do that, you're going to be uncomfortable. If you don't practice it, you don't build yourself up in that plane, you're going to be
Yeah.
uncomfortable when it comes time to doing it, and you're not going to want to do it, and it's not going to be of use. So that's why it's very important that you build yourself up on those four levels because they're going to support one another, but it's not going to be a thing that it's going to one thing is the only thing you should be working on. You have to be
Yes.
compartmentalizing these things like I mentioned previously.
So you said there were four things that you mentioned there, which was physical, your mental, your emotional, and your spiritual. The one thing that I think that you could have added there as well was the social element to that. Because when you're going through people that are suffering with you, that also adds to that grit to want to push through because you're not going to let your brothers through. I mean, one of the passages from our code is never will I quit on myself, my family, or my brothers. And I think that is paramount
Right.
to what helped us kind of push through even further. I didn't want to let you guys down.
I would agree. Right. With you 100%. I think those four are in preparation. You
Mm-hmm.
have once you're going through adversity, you got to make sure that other people who have also done those things are with you. Now that social aspect is comes through in the midst of adversity, and I would agree with it. But if you don't have,
Perfect.
if you everybody is having to pull you because
Yeah.
you've done none of the work in preparation for this,
Mm-hmm.
they're gonna spend all their time trying to motivate you when that's bandwidth that they need for themselves as well. Not to
Balance.
say, I mean,
Precisely.
but they're also in that never will I quit on myself, my family, or my brothers.
Yes.
You are quitting on them before they are
By not
even
preparing.
are. So time is
Yes.
time is not linear. Time is
Mm-hmm.
circular, I think.
Mhm.
We have to look at this like, yeah, we went through this part and we get to this end because we did it together. But had I not done these things before I knew you, I wouldn't
Right.
even be on the same level as you. I wouldn't be a
Right.
like-minded man. I wouldn't be,
Mm-hmm.
same level as being your brother. Does that
Right.
make sense?
Yeah, of course.
So,
I love how you framed it though, because you started with physical, and a lot of people they think that when you go to the gym, it's all just about the aesthetics of it, and I disagree with that. By pushing yourself every day at the gym, and but it doesn't have to be every day, but by pushing yourself on a daily basis or a weekly basis, this gives you the capability to push through more adversity than you would normally think about. And science has actually proven this by doing things that make you uncomfortable. You stimulate a portion of the brain called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex, which is the portion of the brain that's responsible for pushing you through difficult times. That actually starts to grow, and they did a study on David Goggins' portion of that, and his actually was enlarged compared to the other people. So we have to remember that humans are adaptive beings. We adapt to our environment and to our circumstances. And if you always live a comfortable, cushy life, that's when you're a soft individual. But if you put yourself in the midst of adversity on a regular basis, you become a hard man. There's that saying that goes, strong men make good times make weak men make hard times, which then again makes strong men.
yeah.
And if you are
It's again circular.
precisely,
Yeah.
so if you're consistently putting yourself in the midst of adversity, even if you are in a comfortable situation, that is where the growth tends to happen. Don't refrain from being uncomfortable. Like your example of the crustacean that grows. Growth is going to happen, and you're going to be uncomfortable, and you're going to be raw for a particular amount of time, but then that hardens up and then you start again. It's a consistent growth of who you are. But if that crustacean stops growing, then it will never need to go through that process again. But things that stop growing or stop or stagnate in nature are usually dead, if you think about it.
Yeah. I think it's Andrew Huberman that he did a study at one point where he was talking about that portion of the brain that
Mm-hmm.
not being used, it actually makes it more difficult and painful to actually go through whatever adversity. And so you don't want to do it because you don't want to build that thing up. And
Yes.
so the less it gets used, it actually uh, dwindles or depletes or it
Yes.
shrinks. And if that happens, you're less likely to use that thing because it's not there. It's
Mm-hmm.
the same thing. If you want to start cutting back on Oreos, don't have them be there. You know,
Right.
but that's the idea. If they're not in front of you, they're not part of you. You're not going to use it. And so if it's dwindled, if it's worthless, if it's or painful to use, you're not going to use it. So at least put yourself through uncomfortable positions. And that might just be getting off the couch. That might be setting your alarm for 20, 30 minutes, an hour earlier than what you normally do. Or, deciding, hey, I've been talking about building this business, but I don't know. And then all of a sudden, you realize these are the steps I need to do. Or somebody says something and all of a sudden what you've been stagnant for months or weeks, that little thing says, that puts you over that plateau because you're looking at it from a different angle. I always talk about,
Right.
grab a different lens, look at things from a different lens. Because if you can look at it from that other angle, or that different lens or the different perception of it, that might just change the way you respond to it. And if that's the case, you might actually be able to push through that barrier.
A different perspective. Have you ever heard of Edward de Bono's 6-hat technique?
No, I guess I have.
Okay, so Edward de Bono came up with this technique where you would have 6 different colored hats. And when you're assessing a problem or you're assessing a challenge that you have in your life or with a team, each person would wear a different hat, or you'd go through the different hat stages. So for example, the white hat is only logical things about this particular problem. So you write out all the logical steps and all the logical issues that you have with the challenge. Then the black hat is all the critiques. So what can go wrong, all the negative situations. The yellow hat is all the positive things. The red hat is how you feel about it, all the emotions that you would have. The green hat is where are opportunities to grow outside of that, and what are new thoughts and positions that you can take on this. And then the last hat is the blue hat, which is the manager's hat. That takes all of the different thought processes and puts it into one thing and kind of like facilitates the situation. And by assessing a problem like that, you've broken it down into so many different steps that you can look at it, like you said, through different colored glasses.
It's when you started talking about it, some of it started sounding familiar, but it's probably been a long time since I've ever visited that. So, no, bringing that up is awesome, because when you start looking at it from those angles, like I'm going to look at it from this type of person's position. Totally different than if you were just going from it's like looking at the business from the janitor's perspective to the CEO's perspective to the front receptionist perspective to the vendor of that business's perspective. Everybody's looking at it from a different angle, and who thinks, man, if they were to just do that, this place probably could have really taken off. And that CEO is not even thinking of that angle. He's just but the janitor, he has time to think about it because he's looking at things from a different angle, and it's just it makes sense.
So there's a Charles Duhigg in his book The Power of Habit. He speaks about an account of Paul O'Neill, who was the CEO of Alcoa, which is Aluminium Company of America. And when he came into the position of CEO, he said that we're going to put safety first. And every single stockbroker and people that were invested in this company, they started to sell their shares. They're like, this guy's crazy. We want profit, profit, profit. But what he did in the course of 2 years, he had quadrupled his investment or the company's output. And the rationale behind it is, and every single company started copying this technique, but without understanding why it worked. And the reason that it worked was that within 24 hours, when there was a safety incident or a near miss, they had to report back to the CEO, which is Paul O'Neill, what the issue was and how they planned to rectify it. What this encouraged cross-lateral communication and up and down communication across the entire organization. And that's what made it work. So when you're looking at different perspectives of different people, this gives you different ways to overcome adversity, as we were speaking about.
Yeah. That just goes to show you how important communication is. And that brings us back to like at the very beginning of our conversation, I was talking about if you are putting everything into one basket, you're going to neglect something else. So if you are focused on your thing, you're not communicating. If you're saying, hey, and you only work on work, your wife is wondering, hey, what's going on? Where's our relationship? What are we doing with the kids? What's this weekend looking like? Blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And so communication is so important because ultimately, no matter what we're doing, whether it's business, whether it's home, whether it's whatever it is that we're doing, our relationships are number one. Even with ourselves, our mind is, we're talking to ourselves when we're saying, I don't want to push further, or I am too tired, I don't want to go. What's going on? Your body's communicating to your brain. It's developed a relationship with it. Your brain knows your body. You're the same thing with your emotions. It's visited that place before. Or like I mentioned with spirituality, we've not visited that before, makes so we're uncomfortable with it. Your relationships make the difference. The relationships you have with your customers, or the relationships you have with your family or your friends, those relationships are important. And how do you build a relationship? You communicate. You have to do it. That is number one. I would say that is leadership 101, is communication and relationship. Relationship first. Because if you're my boss, it doesn't matter if somebody told me, oh, Kyle's in charge of you now, you have to do everything he says. What if I don't? Oh, you get fired. Okay. I didn't need this job anyways, whatever the case is, right? But if somebody says, hey, Kyle's your boss. All right, good. I like Kyle. I work with you. I have a relationship with you. When you ask me to do something difficult, I'm going to be like, you know what? I want to get this done. I want to do it right. Why? Because I like you. You're a good man, and I have a relationship with you that I want to see you succeed. And you wouldn't be asking me to do something because we have a relationship. You wouldn't be asking me to do something that is outrageous because you want to see me succeed as well. And that's relationship. It's not overlording. I might be a subordinate of yours, but you're not, I'm not under your thumb, so to
Right.
speak,
You're
right?
leading from the
It's
front.
right. And we have a relationship, and you have my respect and I have your respect. And we both have a common goal, which is that thing. We got to get that thing done, sell those widgets or do that thing. We've got to get that done. You have a ton of things you need to do, and you know that I have the skill set maybe to get this thing done. So you're asking me, hey, go do that. I hate doing that thing. I might be good at it, but I hate it. But because you've asked, I'm going to do what you've asked me to do, because I have a relationship with you. I trust you. I respect you, and I know you wouldn't, and I know you respect me, and you wouldn't be asking me to do something that is going to be illegal or get me fired or whatever the case is. And so
Right.
it works both ways. And so I don't have to listen to you because someone told me. I listen to you because I willingly want to respect you and want to see you succeed. And how do you succeed? I succeed. It works both ways.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's the same thing with, parent to child, husband to wife. It doesn't matter. Nobody overlords somebody because I'm in charge around here. Nobody wants to listen to that person. But the minute you have respect for the person and you want to see them succeed, and they know you want to see them succeed, they're going to go overboard for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
It also stems from Coach Ruff's redefining the 21st century man. If you look at the warrior paragon, in there twice is Makoto and sincerity of heart. So in the first protocol, which is pragmatic leadership, he says sincerity of heart. In the second protocol, which is the warrior matrix, it's Makoto. And he talks about sincerity of heart. And if you think about that, it's not asking what other people can do for you, but rather what you can do for them, and acting with that integrity and honoring them and respecting them, which gives you the ability to get buy-in from people. Zig Ziglar said that you could have anything in this world that you want if you would only get enough people what they want. And that's a technique that I think that helps with communication, is perspective versus perception. They interviewed a CIA agent, and they were talking about how somebody's perception is actually their view of reality. It doesn't mean that it is reality as it is. And what would help you to get better results out of other people and get more buy-in is being able to separate your perception from their perception and assimilating their perception. Their thinking. How is that person feeling in this moment? What are their stresses?
Right.
What are they going through? What have they eaten enough? And by looking at it from that perspective, assimilating their perception, now you get to navigate the world as if you're them and get the best results out of them as well for yourself. And it creates a win-win situation.
Right. And I in my daily job, my everyday job, I have
Hmm.
to think of multiple angles and how people think. And
Right.
I'm listening. I can hear the naysayers say right now, "Oh, you guys are just manipulating. That's all you're talking about. You talk about manipulating people."
Hmm.
Okay, sure, sure. But what's my ultimate goal in manipulation? Am I in manipulating somebody or am I talking to them? Manipulation intends towards the negative. So in that case, if I'm
So I'll challenge you
manipulating
on
you
I'll
to, I
challenge you
want.
on that, right? I'll challenge you on that. Okay? Here's a question. If you take steel and you manipulate it into a sword, does that steel become better?
Right, and that's where I was going with it. I agree, 100%. Somebody might look at that, and it's what the intention is with it. And but if my intention is to manipulate you to get this done in a
Gain.
positive way, we got to get that thing done. We're trying to break $1 million this year.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm trying to manipulate because I have to adjust your thinking.
Hmm.
That once again, you're adjusting the molecules in that metal to build that sword, to hold that shape, to get that sharpness on it.
Hmm.
That's that idea. And I'm just playing that devil's advocate where you say, "Oh, you guys are just trying to control people." No, we're not. We are trying to get them to think. They said they want to do this. They said they want to be on our team and they want to work towards this. And that's what,
Hmm.
and so I've got to help adjust their thinking to get to that point. If
Yeah.
they are saying, "Well, I don't really want to do that," then maybe you are not the best person to be in my circle, be with
Precisely.
people I hang out with, and
Hmm.
perhaps
Yeah,
you would be better suited over there with that company, whatever
for
the
sure.
case may be. And you have to, and that's the other thing that I think we forget sometimes. We have to cut ties. We may have to cut ties with people that are not beneficial for our life. We may
Right.
have to just not have those people in our circle. You can have a solid
Hmm.
relationship with them. I remember Coach Arnold one time saying or writing, I if you treat me bad or something along that, I'm going to paraphrase, but if you treat me bad, I may forgive you, but I will not forget that, and I will treat you accordingly
Hmm.
in conjunction with that thing, the way you treated me. And that's that
Right.
idea is, I don't wish you ill. I don't want to see you get hurt. I don't want to see bad things happen to you, but you are not part of my circle. And
Yeah.
I,
And that's okay.
I wish you well.
L- Yeah, it's learning to
Say no when you necessarily need to, because at the end of the day, not everybody is there to be there for a long time. Some people are just in your life for a season to teach you lessons that are specific to making you a better and stronger person. And look at that adversity those people have caused as a catalyst to push you to where you need to be. But again, coming back to your original statement, if you didn't have the physical and emotional stamina to be able to handle that, then you wouldn't go through that and you wouldn't become the stronger person that you are. And that's one of the things where we start in Excalibur. I remember speaking to you about my business platform and how I intended to start. And one of the pillars is the physical pillar. And it's not something that is outlandish or outrageous to be able to do. It's simple steps, step-by-step process of small consecutive steps that are going to get you to where you need to be. And you start to see people's confidence just rise and rise as they go through the program. But that's and I'm not pushing my program on anybody. I mean, you could go on YouTube and find some sort of workout program that you could do. Go to a martial arts studio. I don't care. Just get some fitness in. Stop sitting behind the TV. Stop sitting and playing games and video games. Stop being on your phone. Get out in nature. Learn to get a little physical, get some rain on your face, and feel what life truly is.
Yep, I would agree with you 100% because we have one shot at this. We have one shot
Mhm.
at this thing called life. And if we are not willing to get a little bit dirty, get a little bit wet, get a little bit uncomfortable, you're never going to grow beyond where you're at. And
Right.
this is the thing that I talk about all the time with various. I've talked to some other people on podcasts. I've been on a couple others and whatnot. And I actually brought up, somebody said, "Hey, if there's one thing you could do, what would you do?" And I said, set your alarm for an hour earlier in the day.
Mhm.
And I was on a panel. There was like two or three other people on there, and
Right.
everybody's like, "Whoa, whoa, an hour." Yeah, what's it? Oh, okay, well maybe we'll start with 20 minutes. all right, you know what? Some movement is better than no movement,
Yeah.
but you're already trying to make these. Well,
Micro.
what if I were to, how about if I were to just do this much, or how about if I just cut out that much, or what? Why? And that's I have a hard time formulating the words for that other than why. Why are you afraid to get up and move? Why are you afraid to set that alarm just a little bit earlier? Why are you
Hmm.
afraid to do that? Is it discomfort? Is it fear of you failing? Because I'll tell you, that's how you learn. But are
Hmm.
you afraid of what people are going to think about you? Why do you want to do this bigger thing if, in fact, you're afraid of what people think? They're going to think differently of you because you're going to be acting differently.
Yeah.
Things are what they are. It's just
Hmm.
there's multiple angles to that. And there's multiple people kicking back on that thought process. And having a response for each person individually is difficult. And so that's why I think I'm flooded with all these different responses but it all boils down to why. Why are you afraid to commit to that? So
Right.
it's just frustrating
The thing, I think one of the things that you could start doing, because maybe an hour is a little bit difficult for some people. What they could start with is doing. James Clear talks about it in his book Atomic Habits. Start small. Start with 15 minutes, but do it for an entire week, every single day. And then next week, you move it back 15 again. Next week, you move it back 15 again. And the final week, you move it back 15 again. Now, you've gone 4 15s and you're an hour back. Because I think a lot of people look at an hour and they're like, oh my goodness, this is such a big number. But if you break it down into 15-minute increments over the course of 4 weeks, that becomes a bulletproof habit that you can imprint into your entire day or life.
And I agree. Little bits, little bites. That's how you eat an elephant,
Hmm.
right? We get that. That's how you walk around the world, is a mile at a time, or one step at a
Yep.
time, or whatever the case may be. But if you are already against that, you say, "Oh man, an hour, no way." Don't even give that life. Don't even give that defense or that pushback to that hour life. Okay, there's an hour. I need to get up. How do I get to that point? Okay, take those
Hmm.
15 minutes, take those 20, take those 30, take those whatever. But you cannot totally negate that end process, that the thing. I want a cajillion dollars. Okay, you want a cajillion dollars? That's great. How are you going to get there? I have no idea. How about go get a second job, or how about start a business, or how about invest in something? I don't know if I want to do. I'll just keep going to my regular work. But I
Hmm.
I want to get that. You're not. You think you want that big thing, but that it's so far away or it's so difficult. I don't want to do. I don't want that. Well, yeah, you do. In order to get there, but you just take little bits at a time to get there. That's how you eat that
Right.
foot long or mile long sandwich, one bite at a
Okay, I
time.
get what you're saying. I think what you're talking about is goals without a plan are just dreams.
Sure.
And
Yes.
that's essentially what people have. They'll put that dream out there, but they won't establish the plan to get there. And
Right.
they're not willing to put the sacrifice out. And if you think about it, discipline is nothing but putting off what you want now for what you truly want. And it equals freedom, as Jocko Wilkinson says, right? Once
Willing.
you have that discipline,
Yeah.
Williams,
Willing. Willink. Willing.
there we go.
Yeah. No, he absolutely does say that, and it's absolutely true because the more you put yourself out there, you're going to be able to do more. The more you are capable of, the more you're going to be capable of. Let's say,
Hmm.
I remember I've had multiple knee surgeries in my life, and I remember laying on the couch recovering from those things. You can't move, you a lot of TV watching in, but nothing's happening, and I was getting so frustrated with myself that I just want to
Hmm.
get up and do something. That was a catalyst because I wanted to do something so bad. That was a catalyst for me to go back to school. I got my degree. I got a whole bunch of different things taken care of during that time frame, and all
Right.
because I was doing nothing, and it was frustrating me. And so the question was asked me, why are you so frustrated that you can't do anything? Because Well, then the question goes back to, why do I work out? I like to work out on the daily, and I do a bunch of stuff. Why do you want to be able to do that? Because I want to be able to do things. I want to be able to go whitewater rafting, and if somebody that I'm in the raft with falls out, I can jump in and get them, or I can pull them out, or I can be the person. If I fall out, I would be able to take care of myself. Hopefully, pull myself back in the water or back in the boat, get to the shore, whatever the case may be. I'm capable of doing things, because once you become able to do things, you become capable of doing things. And so that world is your oyster. You have the ability to do what you want to do, how you want to do it, because you've gone through it. The trick is, and when I say you can do whatever you want and how you want to do it, and everybody thinks, oh, you're just going to control everything around you. Not necessarily, because I know what it takes to get to that point, and I know the adversity that it takes to get there, and what I'm going to do in the process. And I don't want to waste that. It's like a martial artist. How many like big black belt martial art guys that are multi-level black belts get in fights at clubs and on the street and all that stuff like that? You never see that. You will rarely ever see it. You'll see those guys defending their wives or their loved ones, or somebody that's being beat up on or something like that. But they're not getting into fights because their ego is so big. It's because they know what it takes to do that and what they're capable of because of their ability. We're going to walk away from this. I'm going to walk away because one, I can really hurt this guy. Two, I don't want to go to jail. And three, it's going to throw off my whole night. There's no need for that.
Right.
So you might have to just have some names called to you, but when have we not had names called to us? I've been called names a million times. I know you have. I know everybody has. So what? You are not going to jail, and you're not hurt. You're not living with the fact that you paralyzed somebody or killed them or something along those lines. Are you capable of doing that? You bet. Are you going to do that? No, because you know what it takes, and you know what can happen if you were to unleash all your fury on that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's parabellum, right? It's you've got to have, it's parabellum, but also arete. Parabellum, prepare for war. You're going to be prepared for war, so you're physically fit and ready to go. But then it's also not arete. It's Andrea, which is manly courage. So taking that energy of getting called names or whatever and channeling it into something that is useful for you, essentially.
Right. I guess there could be a little arete in there where it's that heroic sense, because you're thinking beyond yourself. You have that freedom to think beyond yourself. You're thinking about, what's this? If I get in a fight, I get arrested, who's taking care of my wife tonight? If I get hurt in this process and I'm no longer there for her, who's taking care of her? Because this guy might pull out a gun or a knife. And I'm just trying to have a good night. Right. Exactly. And I think I'm some tough guy that I can take this. And you might be able to, but you're not going to be able to defeat a bullet. You're not going to be able to defeat a knife.
Yeah.
So,
agreed, man.
Well, Ken, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, sir. Great to have you on the podcast. Would you like to tell the viewers where they can find you?
Multiple places. You can find one, kenfrownfelter.com. If you have events, if you're in charge of events, or you have a business and you need someone to come talk to your people about motivation, I've got a website that can help you get in touch with me. So kenfrownfelter.com. You can find me on every piece of social media there is: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or X. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me there. And you can also find my podcast, the What's a Hero podcast. It's actually the What's a Hero podcast. And that's, you can either Google that in, or the www.thewhat'saheropodcast.buzzsprout.com. It has all our previous episodes, plus links to your favorite podcast platforms. So then you could download or subscribe or whatever to that podcast and listen to those. And I've got a good number of really solid people interviewed on that one. And so I enjoy that. So you can find me on all those, also on YouTube, Ken Frownfelter as well. And the podcast is also on YouTube as well. So pretty much any social media you look at, I'm on there. Just type in Ken Frownfelter. I should be popping up somewhere. That's FRO, just like the opposite of smile, Felter. So
awesome, my brother. Guys, you know where to find us. You can find us on Excalibur Coaching on Instagram, Facebook, as well as YouTube and Spotify. Hope that you guys had enjoyed the session and have a fantastic day.